building on the entrepreneur and founder space, we're doing a founder spotlight with Gail Becker, who is founder of CAULIPOWER. And I'd love to introduce Josh Kampel, who's the CEO at Clarim Media, who is moderating the session. Hi, Gail. Hi, Josh.
Hello. So
nice to meet you. Thanks so much for being here. We've had some great sessions and really excited to hear this one. So, Josh, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Juliet, and great day so far. Yeah, everyone's been great and active in the chat and the Q&A. If you have questions throughout the session, please definitely put them there. Gail, great to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So, I'm excited. I got a chance to meet Gail about 7 years ago. I was looking back at when we first met, and at that time, she was a president at Edelman, one of the largest, independent PR firms in the country. And then, lo and behold, I look on LinkedIn, a year later, and all of a sudden, she's an entrepreneur launching a brand, CAULIPOWER, which many of you may be, familiar with. And I was fascinated with the last session, Gail. If you got to sit through that one, Denise from Partake, very similar story, right? A similar story. Kids, with an allergy, decide to sort of, come up with a solution. But, talk a little about, first for those out there who aren't familiar with CAULIPOWER, but also that transition from corporate America, cushy gig at Edelman to taking that leap and going out on your own to launch a company in an industry that you really didn't know much about.
I think you could say not know much about to not know anything about. That would be probably more accurate. So yeah, I did come from Edelman. I was there for 16 years. And to be honest with you about my time in corporate America, I became a little bit disenchanted. I sort of worked my way up to the top of the firm and realized that I was ready for a different view. But I didn't really know what that would be, to be honest. Around the same time, my father had passed away, and he was an entrepreneur. He came to this country with nothing, less than nothing. He was a Holocaust survivor. And I knew when he passed that I somehow wanted to honor him. I wanted to follow in his footsteps, but didn't really know also what that would look like. I stumbled across cauliflower crust pizzas one night on the internet. There were 569,000 recipes. I made one. It was all right. My son asked me if I was going to make it again. And I said, there's no freaking way I am making that again, because it took 90 minutes to make a pizza crust after I got home from a full day of work. But I said, I'll tell you what, I'll find it for you. I looked everywhere, online, in stores, couldn't find it. So I thought, I can't be the only one who thinks that 90 minutes is too long to make a pizza crust. So I put those three things in a proverbial blender: my disenchantment with corporate life, the passing of my father, and the realization that there was a huge white space there. I put them all together, and what I came out with was, I know I'm going to leave my job and start a company called CAULIPOWER. And that's what I did in May of 2016.
Wow. And I think a lot of what we heard in that last session and what we've heard throughout the days, throughout the day so far, is as an entrepreneur, surrounding yourself with the right people is important. Funding is obviously important. Talk a little about the journey, as that entrepreneur who hadn't launched anything, how do you find the right people? How do you think about capital? And as a woman specifically, do you feel that, making that journey was different for you than when you looked at sort of your counterparts, that have gone, along a similar entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah. So, look, there are lots of different ways to start a business, particularly a food business. I knew that if I was going to give up what I was giving up, that I did want it to be sizable. You can start out, you can sort of, make things in your home and sell them at farmers market and share with your friends. And that is a fantastic way to start a food business. It actually wasn't my way. And maybe it has something to do with me being a little older and I felt like I didn't have that much time. So I did go all in. And by that, I mean, I hired I hired consultants to teach me what I didn't know about the food business. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs think because it's their idea and their passion and their mission that they sort of have to know everything. And I think, entrepreneurs often fail because, they put that pressure on themselves. I think I was of a certain age where I was super happy to talk about what I did know and really comfortable in admitting what I didn't know, and then hired smart people around me to teach me about the business. And I'm still learning about the business every single day. In terms of, how that journey was different or, more challenging because I'm a woman, sure, there are definitely, touch points that I can point to, going all the way back to, trying to find a co-manufacturer to make the pizza. I don't know if I were a man, if it would have been a slightly easier journey, but I can tell you there were a lot of, manufacturers who told me absolutely not, who thought I was crazy for even wanting to make a pizza out of cauliflower. I mean, are you nuts, lady? Is basically what I got. And I kissed a lot of, frogs, as it were, and until I convinced someone to do it.
Right. No, that's great. And you initially bootstrapped the business.
I did. I did. I literally put everything I had. One of the speakers right before me was talking about sort of the risk profile. Yeah, for some reason, I decided to put everything I had into CAULIPOWER. Now it probably seems like a semi good idea, but at the time it was probably pretty stupid. And certainly my financial advisor at the time told me as much. But it was almost like a calling. Like it was something I really needed to do. My father, he left me, a little bit of money, not a lot, and certainly not enough to retire, on a desert island from, but I did feel like I know how hard he worked for that. And so I thought it was be put to really good use if that's what I used to start my business. And then we launched in February of 2017, and I did my first fundraise in about September of that year.
Great. So, when you think about building out, obviously a lot of today has been focused on, gender equality, gender equity in the workforce. I'd love you to talk a little about, as you think as a CEO and a woman entrepreneur, building out your team and your organization and thinking about diversity, both on the gender, on ethnicity. How do you think about that as you compile and comprise your workforce? And just how is that sort over the past 5 years, has that changed, and sort of how important is diversity as you build the organization?
It's such a great question, and quite frankly, one that I don't get often enough. I will say that I am really proud because CAULIPOWER not only has a female CEO, we also have a female CFO and a female COO. So that's probably a fairly rare trifecta. And I feel like it's definitely one of the secrets to our success. I honestly, I did feel additional responsibility in order to take a bet on, people that maybe didn't have, all of the experience that I was looking for, or maybe that was typical, but I could see their passion, I could see their commitment, and, both have proved to be absolutely invaluable to the business and really have led quite a way in terms of what the business is today. So I'm really proud of that decision, and I think it's definitely a secret to our success. And then something that we have tried to continue throughout hiring of all of the CAULIPOWER team, diversity in every sense of the word. I just think it makes for a better team, more diversity of thought, which is ultimately what we all need, and diversity of backgrounds. And I just feel like it's a much richer experience. I actually think that one of the reasons why so many women leave the corporate world to start their own businesses is because, we're all just really trying to create the type of work environment that we want to work in. And I think that was part of my disenchantment with corporate life. I kept sort of hitting my head and thinking, well, why can't it be like this? And why can't it be like this? And why can't I be working next to these people? And then finally I sort of thought, well, I can be, I just have to build it myself. And, that obviously wasn't the only impetus, but, it is a strong factor.
So when you look at corporate culture, right? So that's obviously important. You had a lot of experience sort of in the communications world, obviously specifically at Edelman. Do you think by industry, do you think let's take the communications industry that you were in, is there, culturally work-life balance? Like if you were to look across the industries, is there a difference, or is it just not based on the industry? It's led from above, and the CEO sets that culture. How do you see, in all the different businesses you've been in or interacted with, does the CEO set the culture, or is it by industry? Just how do you see that?
I think the CEO definitely sets the culture, for good and for bad. And I think one of the interesting things about being, in the world of consultancy, which I was before I started CAULIPOWER, is you get a really good perch into different kinds of businesses and companies. And you see that sort of infiltration of thought and leadership and where it works and where it doesn't. And, look, I'd be lying if I said I didn't take a lot of those learnings, both good and bad, from all the different businesses that I was able to witness over the years, and, put them into creating CAULIPOWER, into creating the type of work environment where people really want to grow and learn and stay. That to me is really important.
Great. So, when you think about sort of the learnings that you went through, when entrepreneurs ask your advice, sort of as I won't even say gender specific, I say as entrepreneurs, what have you learned? What would you have done differently? What's the advice you give to current entrepreneurs?
How long do we have here? So I would say, exactly what I had said earlier, which is, don't be afraid to admit what you don't know and hire people around you. That I think is a huge learning for me that has really helped to surround CAULIPOWER with some of the best and brightest in the industry. And I'm still learning every day. I think the second thing that people need to do, and I did this, for myself and for CAULIPOWER pretty early on, which is you have to figure out which rules you want to break and which rules you want to follow. Because look, I didn't know anything about the food industry other than I cooked it, bought it, and ate it. And there's a lot of conventional wisdom, this is how the industry works. This is how people do it. These are the channels. This is the order. This is like, and there's just like so much prescription and so much, historical context before you, which is really, really important. And I'm so grateful to all of those people who showed me what that was. But I really wouldn't be an entrepreneur, nor would I be any different than the rest of the industry if I didn't do things a little bit differently, if I didn't sort of challenge some of that advice, if I didn't, provoke and think, oh, I understand that's the way it's always been done, but I think we're going to try it this way. Otherwise, you're just like everybody else. And so, really making a cognizant decision about what your rules you're going to follow, which rules you're going to break, that's going to serve you very well.
Right. And to that point, that's where innovation comes in, right? When you talk about food innovation and expansion of categories, talk a little about how you do kind of break out of that traditional box. I think probably, as you started as a cauliflower crust pizza company, you've expanded your portfolio of products into other categories, and really, we did, on your recommendation, tried the chicken tenders last week, and I will say they are spicy, even though they don't say they're that spicy. They're pretty spicy.
There's an original too, if it's too spicy.
But they were great.
Is what we call it.
But how do you start to think about that? Innovation that happens. That you don't take the prescription of just, okay, I'm a cauliflower crust pizza company. What's that next line extension? Thinking outside the box. Do you think that, obviously not coming from the industry, that helps you kind of think differently? But what is your thought process? How do you think about evolving the business? And does that give you a leg up that you didn't come from the industry?
You know what? I really think it does. I have to say. And so, that's one area where we did things differently. There were people who said to me, just do pizza 100 different ways and don't, leave that. For me, I was hearing from two of our most important stakeholders, our retail customers and our consumers. And I waited until we got permission from both those key stakeholders before we went into other avenues. And it was great because we proved the value of our brand and our worth to the retailers in the pizza aisle. They were coming to us and saying, "Oh, what else can you do? Right? What other categories can you reinvent?" And that was great. And we heard the same thing from our consumers. Another area where we sort of did things a little bit differently is, so we launched in 30 Whole Food stores in February of 2017. 30 is not very much. It was great. We were in Walmart by September of that same year, which is unbelievably fast. And a lot of people told me, don't go into Walmart so soon. It's really going to damage you. And for me, I had a pretty good gig in corporate America, as you said. And if I were going to, leave all that behind and take a, jump the way that I did, it was going to be to do something that was going to have an impact on a lot of people. And for me, that meant being in Walmart. And so I did take that risk. And obviously Walmart took a risk on us as well. And it ended up paying off for both of us.
Great. So we have a question here, and I think it plays well into this idea of you use it as risk. How do you overcome your fear? Did you have any fears in taking the step to start the business or any business, right? So I think, you talked a little about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and sometimes you put fear aside, but how do you manage through sort of the fear of change, of starting a business? Talk a little about that.
The fear, I don't know who asked that question, but it's such a good question. The fear is palpable. It is so all consuming, particularly early on when I just locked myself in my dingy home office for 9 months trying to build the company, and no one knew what the hell I was doing. And to be honest with you, it was, every single day I would have this angst, do I want to continue? Do I want to come out? Do I want to put my reputation on the line in terms of she chucked it all for this crazy pizza business? And I think, at the end of the day, what I realized is I've been on a bit of a journey. I think we all sort of start out like, why me? Why would I be able to succeed? Like, what is it about me that makes me think I could enter this multi-billion-dollar category and succeed? But what that has evolved to really is, why not me? And hence, why not you? And I think what is so great about this industry is, the idea that you can take a bet on yourself. You can make that risk. When I left my job in corporate America, I wrote a blog that's called "Better to Say Oops Than What If," and that was my my North Star. I always thought I'd rather fail than not try at all, and that I've sort of maintained that throughout. I also think people wait for a sign, right? It's kind of like you wait for a sign that now's the right time. It's finally the right time. The water's just great. Jump on in. Well, that sign's never going to happen.
Right.
And it's kind of like having kids. If you wait for the right time to have kids, you're never going to have them. So you might as well start.
Right. No, that's great. There's another question here. Were you all in? Was this your only idea? Were you exploring other business ideas and then just sort of landed on this is the one for you? Were there any other things you were sort of thinking about?
You know what? This was my idea, and I didn't really have any others. This is the one that finally. I mean, I've had others over the years, never executed upon them because, to the point I just made, I think I was waiting for some big sign that never came. And I guess you could say that in my mind, it was the passing of my father that made me really understand and appreciate the fragility of life, which I think also the pandemic has done, right? It's like, if it's taught us anything, is that, what the hell are you waiting for? It's like, who knows what tomorrow brings? So you might as well, do something that's really meaningful, do something that's going to bring you joy, because we just don't know what tomorrow brings.
Right. No, that's great. And so obviously the conference is about actions speak louder than words, focused on this idea of gender equality. We have a lot of people here in the audience that are aren't necessarily CEOs that are able to hire great women around them like a CFO and a COO, but want to make an impact and on their organizations. What advice do you give to people within organizations who are looking to really promote diversity and gender equality? Is there sort of things that you were able to do in your past life, sort of at Edelman, or when you speak with other women in corporate America that you think can make a difference, rather than just talking about it? What are the actions that we could all take?
I think, for me and for CAULIPOWER, I would say we're, the company today, we're about 50 people, and it's made up of two kinds of people. One are the people who come from vast food experience, right? If they've worked in operations, they've worked in supply chains, they've worked for small companies, they've worked for big companies, and they come with huge amounts of food experience. The other half of the company, and I would say it's probably about 50-50, and this is the category that I fall into, is we're just passionate. We're just passionate about what we do. We just care. Look, who would have ever hired me to be the CEO of CAULIPOWER? Nobody, right? And so, just like I took a chance on myself, I also take a chance on other people. And I do that because, I can see that passion. I can see their commitment. I can see their desire for a life change. And as someone who's been through several life changes, I can tell you there is no greater motivation than wanting to reinvent yourself and prove to yourself that you can do it.
Great. Well, Gail, you're definitely an inspiration. There's definitely a lot of notes here about the changes as sort of we've talked about, as with kids with celiac, these are the types of companies that have a mission and a purpose and are just great business. So we're excited to support you and have you here today. So thank you again for participating.
It was so my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And just a reminder to anyone listening, if you direct message us on any of our social channels at CAULIPOWER, there's a free product with your name on it. I hope you enjoy.
Great. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
That was brilliant, and I love your attitude to life, and I can agree with you at being 37 weeks pregnant that there is no right time to have a child.
Exactly. Well, congratulations. I was like,
yep, there's no perfect time.
That's a perfect time.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That was so inspiring, and I think again just so much brilliant advice.